all I am about is the truth. I want to know who killed Charlie Kirk, if Israel's at fault, and I think that's possible. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. I would say that. If I thought that was the case, if I thought, that was a plausible scenario, I would tell you that. And I would be pushing for further examination of the evidence and all the rest. But I don't think that's the case. And I want to talk about a tweet that came out today. I think it's so interesting. One of the biggest arguments, one of the biggest pieces of evidence that was used in the past 2 weeks about this theory that Israel was involved in killing Charlie Kirk, among others, is that Charlie Kirk was offered a $150 million bribe by Israel, effectively to double down on his support for Israel. If he was questioning, if he was skeptical, there was this line that went viral. They said that Netanyahu had offered him $150 million to buy his silence, which is an enormous sum of money. Annual budget for Turning Point is $140 million. So if Charlie Kirk takes $150 million from Netanyahu, they double their annual revenue, and all they have to do is stop questioning one issue.
What do y'all think? Y'all think that's true? Y'all think the Israel lobby try to, bribe Charlie Kirk with $150 million? I can see it. I mean, they've spent a lot more in terms of totality on other influence campaigns, especially ever since. I mean, just look, they're trying to censor TikTok about certain issues, the Gaza, Palestinians, and all that. So I can definitely see it. But what do y'all think? Let me know in the comments.
And so people said Charlie Kirk turned that offer down, and that's why they killed him. Now, if that were true, that would be pretty extraordinary. That would show you how much Netanyahu wanted to absolutely control Turning Point. Maybe Turning Point was pro-Israel, but if he was willing to shell out $150 million to eradicate any doubt, if there was any at all, even a slight amount of doubt, that would show you how much Netanyahu cared, not only about Turning Point, but that it was absolutely rock solid and unwavering. If Charlie Kirk turned that down, equally, that would demonstrate his defiance, that he is absolutely committed to questioning Israeli influence. He is set on this journey. He's evolving on the issue. He's turning against them. Well, where do we get this $150 million figure? We got it from Candace Owens and Max Blumenthal. Candace Owens and Max Blumenthal intimated that a major donation was made and that Charlie Kirk rejected it. Candace Owens, pressing Bill Ackman, said, "What do you have to say about the $150 million about Tucker Carlson?"
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but after maybe a week or a couple of days after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Candace Owens did put up on Twitter saying, no, Charlie Kirk wouldn't have this meeting with these Jewish donors, and he was offered, $150 million to be silent or change his position on Israel, not just himself, but also the Turning Point USA, which is very important because at the time, and even days leading up to his death, Charlie Kirk was actually coming around on the Israeli issue to be a little bit more isolationist and a little bit more anti-Israel in terms of the foreign policy perspective. So this bribe, it's kind of a realistic scenario, but that $150 million tweeted out by Candace, that's something, that's a pretty big number.
Well, it turns out today we hear from Blumenthal and Candace Owens, both. They say, we never said Netanyahu offered $150 million. We never said that. They never said that either. So last week, each of them posted, we're not saying Israel killed Charlie Kirk. We never said that. This week, they're saying, we never said Netanyahu offered him $150 million. We never said that at all. Okay, so what actually are they saying now?
Yeah, so first you come out and say, the bribe was $150 million, which is a lot of money to pretty much everybody on the planet. But now the number is $1 to $2 million. So clearly there's something wrong here. Someone's not being honest. Someone's not being truthful. There's some deceit. I'm not sure on whether it's Candace or Max Blumenthal, or whoever they're getting that source from. that information, whether it's someone just putting it out there just to confuse the narrative or use their kind of own agenda to kind of say, oh, Israel is trying to blackmail Charlie. That's why he's dead, because Israel did it. You always got to check your sources with this, but this is, this is some conservative stuff that, I don't really particularly get into that much, but this is quite the story if this is actually true.
Because if you rewind 2 weeks ago, this was the case that was made. And I want to just lay it out. I promise it'll be brief, and then we'll move on. I don't want to talk about this every night forever, but this is important because my credibility is now on the line. People are questioning my credibility. The case that was made to us 2 weeks ago is that Charlie Kirk was defiant against the Israel lobby. He was offered a $150 million bribe to buy his silence. He rejected it. They said he was ambushed at a retreat with the Jewish billionaire Bill Ackman in August, where they staged an intervention. And Jewish donors were screaming at him, telling him, you must be pro-Israel. And he left that meeting feeling blackmailed. This was the circumstantial evidence around about September 10th when he died that powerful forces were furious with him. They tried to bribe him. They tried to intervene. Maybe there was intimidation, menacing. Charlie Kirk felt afraid. He was telling people privately he felt blackmailed. He thought they might kill him.
Okay, so apparently we're getting a little bit more of the story. So Charlie Kirk goes to this meeting with all these billionaire donors, or very rich donors, trying to donate to Turning Point USA, trying to say, like, hey, just don't say too much about this issue and be a little bit more pro-Israel in your messaging, and we'll give you all this money, guaranteed. But it looks like he's trying to paint the picture of, and this is what the narrative is kind of changing as we're kind of going along in this clip, is that the money is being used to blackmail his position, to blackmail him into a position on Israel. But that was already established. But now it's kind of turning into, you were either going to be blackmailed and be under our boot, or you're going to be shot and killed, or maybe harmed at the time. And he even Nick is already saying right now, Charlie Kirk left that meeting, felt like he was being blackmailed, threatened, pressured. And obviously, it's one thing to be blackmailed and pressured by just like a regular person, but when you're talking to people of means, people who are really wealthy and have a lot of connections and influence, those threats kind of hold a lot more weight. So this is an interesting caveat in this story here.
And so when he died, about a month after these developments took place, people said, well, clearly Israel killed him because they couldn't buy him. Israel killed him because they couldn't buy him. Their intervention failed. He couldn't be blackmailed. He was going to go on and resist them. So they took him out. And they took him out. And then the theory went, they took him out so that they could install a solidly pro-Israel successor in his place, someone like Ben Shapiro. They said, and once under the control of Ben Shapiro, Turning Point would not allow anti-Semites like Tucker Carlson to speak at their events. And once Turning Point was completely under their control, the pro-Israel consensus would be protected. Well, what if we found out in the past 2 weeks about each part of this narrative, which was promulgated by Max Blumenthal and Candace Owens? We found out that there was no $150 million bribe. There was donor money, and I heard this from people too, but it wasn't $150 million. Maybe it was $2 million. That's a far cry. That there is a world of a difference. I heard from people that Kirk turned down money. We're now hearing figures like $2 million. Okay, this is a group that made $143 million per year. $2 million is what? Less than 2%? It's
Okay, so now the narrative is going from, okay, the blackmail was not for 150, it's 2 million, and I think a little bit more what he's kind of touching on is the assassination wasn't just to get rid of Charlie, it was to put in a more conservative and more pro-Israel person in his place, which would be Ben Shapiro. See, now that's a big conspiracy and a big accusation. I'm not sure if I necessarily believe it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do y'all think Israel really designed this whole plot to kill Charlie and install somebody a little bit more conservative on him, a little bit more conservative than him, to be, a bigger face of the conservative movement that is a little bit more friendly towards Israel? I don't know. But y'all let me know in the comments.
Compared to 100% of their budget, that's a big difference. So we found out that 150 million, oh, no one ever said that. That's not real. That's fake. Okay, so he was not offered a bribe that was worth 100% of their revenue. Maybe there were some donors that were squeamish. We're talking $1 million, $2 million. Sounds like a lot of money, but you got to consider the proportions here. Then, about that Bill Ackman retreat, the intervention where Charlie Kirk felt blackmailed, what have we found out about that? Well, Charlie Kirk actually organized that event. He handpicked the guest list. He sent out the invitations. It was advertised as a Turning Point retreat. Turning Point USA organized the event at a hotel that Bill Ackman paid for. These were all influencers that Charlie Kirk selected who would go and do Turning Point events on college campuses. And on the contrary, even though it was represented to us that Charlie Kirk felt blackmailed, Max Blumenthal since issued a clarification and said, well, the anonymous sources said Charlie Kirk felt emotionally blackmailed.
See, this is where it's kind of getting a little confusing, for at least for me, because it's like, okay, the whole narrative was Charlie Kirk went and had this meeting with these rich donors, and they pressured him and they blackmailed him. Now it's going from, okay, Charlie Kirk had this meeting, he knew who was going to be there, he invited people who were actively there and who he knew was going to come, and he leaves that occasion, that event, feeling pressured and blackmailed and threatened to an extent. That doesn't make sense to me, because it's like having a birthday party and inviting a whole group of people that you know, and then going to the party, leaving it, and being like, oh, I think everybody hates me. It's like, well, then why did you invite people who you think don't like you? It doesn't make any sense. Like, if you know the people who are going to be there, you obviously know they're allies to you, they're conservatives, but you leave that meeting feeling threatened or blackmailed about a certain issue. I don't know, something's not right here. There's a little bit more. I think there's a little bit more than the story than what's getting out from all these sources like Candace and Max and Blumenthal and all that.
So once again, it was represented to us that Charlie Kirk happened to be at a thing. They ambushed him, screamed at him, and they left him feeling blackmailed. What do you think when you hear blackmail? Do you think they got dirt on him? They're going to destroy his reputation or his career or his family? Well, in reality, he arranged the event. He picked the guest list. There was some heated debate, but otherwise, within cordial sessions about Israel, that was on the docket. That was the planned discussion. And only after the fact does Blumenthal say he didn't feel blackmailed in the conventional sense. He felt emotionally, morally blackmailed, as in guilt-tripped.
Okay, so that's the clip. That's really interesting. So what he's really is exposing is, Candace Owens' initial story about the blackmail money being $150 million, which it clearly, obviously, wasn't based on his sources. Really, one or 2 million. Second thing is that he's saying it wasn't just like Charlie in a room alone with all these rich donors who care about Israel. It was a room full of rich donors and also conservative influencers that Charlie Kirk invited at a hotel, which Bill Ackman paid for. It seemed like it was a kind of like a camp, really, for a kind of think tank session about where they wanted to move their messaging on this certain issue. Charlie Kirk goes, he leaves feeling pressured, not on good ground with all these donors that were there, and then reports back to his other coworkers or friends or executive board saying, hey, I didn't have a good meeting there, and I kind of feel like I was pressured or blackmailed to be a little bit more pro-Israel than what I've been recently. I don't know. I just think there's a lot missing from the story that I need to know before I even figure out if this is really a plot by Israel to kill this American conservative. I'm not sure if I believe that, but it's definitely something to think about. And if we get more of the story, it'll definitely kind of fill in some of these gaps. But let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. Like I always mention, always comment and like and share and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.